The bustling interstellar space station of Xanthera Prime was a melting pot of species from across the galaxy. It was a place where cultures collided, where the rich flaunted their wealth and the poor scavenged for survival. Alex Carter, a human trader, walked briskly through the crowded corridors, his arms loaded with supplies for his next journey. He kept to himself, as humans often did in such diverse environments, but his sharp eyes missed little. Turning a corner near a dimly lit alley, he caught sight of movement, a flicker of shadow. He hesitated, curiosity getting the better of him. In the corner of the alley, near a stack of discarded crates, two small, fox-like aliens huddled together. Their fur was patchy, their large eyes hollow with hunger. They were barely more than children, their fragile frames shaking as they rummaged through a pile of rotting food scraps. Alex frowned. He had seen hardship before, but there was something different about these two. They were identical, twins, with silvery fur that glowed faintly even in their weakened state. They whispered to each other in a language he didn't understand, their movements timid and wary. "Hey," Alex called out, keeping his tone soft. The twins froze, their ears perking up as they turned toward him. One of them, slightly braver than the other, stepped in front protectively, her thin frame trembling but her gaze defiant. Alex raised his hands in a gesture of peace. "I'm not here to hurt you." The braver twin hesitated, her eyes darting to her sibling, who clung to her arm. They were clearly starving, but fear kept them rooted in place. Alex sighed, setting his supplies down and rummaging through his bag. A moment later, he pulled out a pack of protein bars. "Here," he said, tossing the pack gently onto the ground near them. The twins flinched but didn't run. The braver one glanced at the food, then back at Alex, her tail twitching uncertainly. "It's safe," Alex assured them. "You need it more than I do." The braver twin picked up the pack cautiously, sniffing it before tearing it open. She handed a bar to her sibling, who hesitated only briefly before devouring it. Alex watched as they ate with desperate speed, their faces lighting up as the food gave them a flicker of energy. "Do you have names?" he asked after a moment. They didn't respond, but the braver one tilted her head, as if trying to understand him. Alex sighed again, feeling a pang of guilt. "I'm Alex," he said, pointing to himself. "You?" The braver twin hesitated, then pointed to herself. "Kelly," she said in a quiet, raspy voice. She pointed to her sibling, Vera. "Well, Kaylee and Vera," Alex said, crouching down to their level. "You can't stay here. It's not safe." The twins exchanged a wary glance but didn't move. Alex made a decision then and there. He couldn't just walk away. Whatever trouble they were in, he'd find a way to help. Kaylee and Vera sat at a small table in Alex Carter's freighter, their wide eyes darting around the cramped but clean space. They were still cautious, unsure of this strange human who had taken them away from the cold, dangerous alleys of Xanthera Prime. But the smell wafting from the small kitchen area made their noses twitch with curiosity. Alex stood by the stove, stirring something in a pot. He glanced over his shoulder and gave them a small smile. "Relax, it's just soup. You both look like you could use something warm." Kaylee, ever the braver of the two, tilted her head at him, her silvery fur catching the soft light of the cabin. "Why? Help us?" she asked hesitantly, her voice accented but clear. Alex shrugged, keeping his focus on the pot. "You needed help. That's reason enough." Vera, who had been silent up until now, whispered something in their native tongue. Kaylee nodded in agreement, though her eyes stayed fixed on Alex. He could tell they were still suspicious, but he didn't blame them. Life on a place like Xanthera Prime didn't teach anyone to trust easily, especially not two orphaned kids with no one to protect them. "Here," Alex said, ladling the soup into two bowls and setting them on the table. "It's just a basic vegetable soup. I don't know if you'll like it, but it's better than eating trash." Kaylee leaned forward, sniffing the bowl cautiously before taking a small sip. Her ears perked up, and she glanced at Vera, nodding. "Good," she said simply, then dug in with more enthusiasm. Vera followed her lead, and soon both of them were eating as if they hadn't had a proper meal in weeks, which, Alex guessed, they probably hadn't. He leaned against the counter, arms crossed, watching them. It was a strange sight. He'd dealt with plenty of alien species in his time as a trader, but these two, there was something different about them. They weren't just starving for food. They were starving for safety, for kindness. "Where are your parents?" Alex asked gently. Kaylee paused, her spoon halfway to her mouth. She lowered it slowly, her ears drooping. "Gone," she said. "Taken, when we were small." Alex felt a pang in his chest. Taken by who? Kaylee's eyes darted away, and she didn't answer. Vera's quiet voice broke the silence. "Hunters. They want us too." Alex's jaw tightened. He didn't know much about the Ailuri species, but he'd heard whispers, stories of their rarity, their empathic abilities, and how some considered them a valuable commodity in the galactic underworld. "Well," Alex said, his tone firm, "no one's taking you while you're with me." Kaylee and Vera both looked up at him, their glowing eyes filled with a mix of hope and disbelief. Kaylee spoke softly, her voice trembling. "You protect us." Alex nodded. "That's right. You're safe here." For the first time, Kaylee smiled. It was small, hesitant, but it was a start. The hum of the freighter's engines filled the quiet as Alex adjusted their course. The twins sat nearby, huddled together on one of the worn benches. Kaylee's ears twitched every now and then, her sharp eyes watching Alex work, while Vara seemed content to rest her head on her sister's shoulder, her small body finally relaxing after days of tension. "You don't talk much, do you?" Alex asked, glancing over his shoulder at them. Kaylee tilted her head, considering his question. "We talk when it is needed," she said. Her voice was soft, but carried a certain wisdom that seemed unusual for her age. Alex chuckled lightly, leaning back in his seat. "Fair enough. Most humans talk too much anyway. But if you're going to be here, I need to know a little more about you." Kaylee glanced at Vara, who gave her a small nod. Kaylee then turned back to Alex, her silvery fur shimmering faintly in the cabin light. "We are Ailuri," she said. "Our people. We live far away on a quiet world. Hidden. Safe. Safe from what?" Alex asked, his brow furrowing. Kaylee hesitated. Vera spoke up this time, her voice barely above a whisper. "From hunters. From those who want our light." Alex's gaze shifted between them, noticing how Kaylee's fur seemed to shimmer more intensely as Vera spoke. He leaned forward, his curiosity piqued. "Your light? What do you mean?" Kaylee sighed, her small shoulders slumping. "We feel, deeply, what others feel. Pain, fear, kindness. It makes us valuable. Dangerous ones. They take us, use us." Alex felt a surge of anger on their behalf. "That's why your parents were taken." Kaylee nodded, her ears flattening. "Yes. We escaped. Barely. But now." She trailed off, her voice breaking. Alex leaned back, his hands gripping the armrests of his chair. He had heard of the Ailuri before, rare and elusive, their empathic abilities prized in the black market. Some used them as living lie detectors. Others sought their bioluminescent fur as luxury trophies. It was barbaric. "You don't have to tell me everything," Alex said after a moment, his voice gentler now. "But you need to know that no one's going to hurt you here. Not while I'm around." Kaylee studied him carefully, as if searching for a lie. Her fur pulsed faintly, glowing brighter. Vera's eyes widened as she tugged at her sister's sleeve. He's telling the truth." Kaylee blinked, her ears perking up. "You feel that?" Vera nodded, a small smile forming on her lips. "Kindness. Strong." Alex raised an eyebrow, amused. You can feel my kindness. That's new. Kaylee didn't answer, but she relaxed slightly, her tail swaying behind her. You're different, she murmured. Humans, not many would do this. Well, Alex said, standing up and stretching. Maybe I'm just the odd one out. For the first time, Vera giggled softly, the sound breaking through the tension in the room. Alex smiled. He didn't know what lay ahead, but he knew one thing. He wasn't going to let anything happen to these two. Alex's freighter drifted silently in the endless expanse of space, but inside, the atmosphere was anything but calm. Kaylee and Vera sat at the small dining table, their glowing eyes fixed on Alex as he flipped through the ship's comm logs. His jaw tightened when he spotted a message flagged as urgent. They're looking for you, Alex said, breaking the silence. Kelly's ears flattened, and Vera shrank into her sister's side. Who? Kaylee asked, though she already seemed to know the answer. Station authorities, Alex replied, rubbing the back of his neck. They flagged you as undocumented aliens. That means they can detain you, or worse, and it doesn't stop there. He hesitated, then added, There's a bounty out on Illyri. Someone wants you badly enough to pay for it. Kaylee's fur bristled, her glow dimming. Hunters, she muttered, her voice filled with both anger and fear. They never stop. Alex sat down across from them, leaning forward on his elbows. Why are you so valuable to them? It's more than just. Whatever it is you can do, isn't it? Vera spoke this time, her voice trembling. Our light, our connection. Some use it to control, to manipulate. She shivered, pressing closer to Kelly. We are not safe anywhere. Alex felt a pang in his chest. He'd seen his share of cruelty in the galaxy, but this felt personal now. He looked at the two small figures before him. So vulnerable yet so resilient. They didn't deserve this. Listen, Alex said, his tone firm. We're not staying in one place long enough for anyone to catch up. I'll change our route, take us somewhere they won't expect. Where? Kaylee asked, her voice skeptical. There's a planet on the outer rim, Alex replied. Quieter than Xanthera Prime, and far off the main trade routes. Not exactly paradise, but we can lay low there for a while. Kaylee's ears twitched. Why? Why are you doing this? We're not your responsibility. Alex sighed, leaning back in his chair. You're right. You're not. But I've seen too many people, too many kids, get caught up in things they can't fight. I'm not going to let that happen to you. For a moment, there was silence. Then, to Alex's surprise, Kaylee reached out and placed a small, clawed hand on his. Thank you, she said softly. Her fur glowed faintly, as if reflecting her emotions. Vera nodded, her own glow flickering. We trust you, she whispered. Alex felt something stir in him, a sense of purpose he hadn't felt in years. He gave them a small, reassuring smile. Get some rest, he said. We'll need to be ready if things get rough. As the twins left for the small sleeping quarters he'd set up for them, Alex turned back to the comm logs, his mind racing. He'd taken risks before, but this felt different. This wasn't just about survival. It was about protecting something precious. Whatever came next, he was ready for it. The stars outside the freighter's windows blurred as Alex punched in a series of commands, rerouting their path once again. The quiet hum of the engines was the only sound in the cabin, save for the occasional flicker of a distant communication signal. He was taking them further out into the uncharted regions of the galaxy, hoping to find a place where no one would think to look. Kaylee and Vera had been quiet ever since the conversation about the hunters. They still didn't fully trust him. Alex knew that, but there was a difference now. They had shared something with him, something personal, and in return, he'd promised to protect them. That had to count for something. He glanced over at the twins, sitting across the room in their corner, their eyes watching him intently. It had been a few days since they'd first met, and in that time, Alex had learned more about their unique abilities, how they could feel emotions like humans felt the weather, how their bond with each other seemed to glow and shimmer with a kind of energy Alex couldn't even begin to understand. "I don't get it," Alex said suddenly, looking up from his controls. "You two are so connected. Why are you so afraid of being alone?" Kaylee looked away, her ears twitching nervously. She had been reluctant to talk about her past, but Alex could tell there was more to their fear than just hunters. Vera, who had been sitting quietly, lifted her head. "When we were young, everything was fine. Our people lived peacefully on our homeworld," she began, her voice soft and distant. "Then the war came. The hunters, they attacked. They took our parents. We were forced to run, to hide." Kelly's voice joined in, stronger now but still shaky. "They destroyed everything. Our home, our people. We had no one left." She clenched her fists, her fur rippling as her emotions flared. "We thought we could survive on our own. But it's so hard, Alex. So hard to trust anyone anymore." Alex could see the pain in their eyes, the loss they carried like a weight they didn't know how to shake. He couldn't imagine what it must have been like for them, having to grow up so quickly, surviving by their wits and their strange empathic powers. They had never known what it felt like to be safe, to be cared for. "I get it," Alex said, his voice quiet but firm. "Trust doesn't come easy, but you're not alone anymore. I've got your back." Kaylee looked up at him, her silvery fur glowing faintly. Her eyes were wide. And for a moment, Alex thought she might say something else. But instead, she just nodded. The silence between them wasn't uncomfortable this time. In fact, it was strangely comforting, like a new understanding had formed between them without either of them saying a word. Alex smiled. "I know a place on the outer rim, a quiet planet, far from here. The locals are peaceful. They won't know anything about Eluri. It's not much, but it's a place we can call home for a while." Kaylee and Vera exchanged a look, their glowing eyes filled with hesitation, but also a flicker of hope. "We'll be safe there?" Vera asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "For as long as I can keep you safe," Alex promised. "But we'll stick together. We'll make it through." For the first time, Alex felt a warmth in his chest, a kind of purpose he hadn't known he'd been missing. No matter what the future held, he would protect these two. They were his family now, whether they realized it or not. The freighter's engines hummed steadily as Alex guided the ship through the silent depths of space. He could feel the tension in the air, thick and unspoken. Kaylee and Vera were still adjusting to the idea of settling somewhere safe, and Alex understood their hesitation. Their past had been a storm of loss. Running from danger and trusting anyone, especially a human, was not easy for them. But he wasn't giving up. Not on them. Not now. "Almost there," Alex said, glancing at the navigation console. They were approaching a small, uncharted planet on the outer rim, far from any trade routes, far from Zenthera Prime, and far from anyone who might be looking for them. Kaylee and Vera were in the back of the ship, sitting together in their usual spot, their glowing fur casting faint patterns on the walls. Alex noticed how they had begun to trust each other more, their bond growing with each passing day. It wasn't just the empathic connection between them. It was something deeper, something that Alex couldn't quite understand. But he felt it every time he saw them interact. "Are you both sure about this?" Alex asked, turning to face them. "This place won't be fancy, but it's quiet. Safe, I hope." Kaylee looked up at him, her expression unreadable. She had grown quieter over the past few days, perhaps still unsure about his promises. "Safe," she repeated, the word heavy in her mouth. She glanced at Vera before continuing. "It's not the place that matters. It's what we do when we're there." Vera nodded, her eyes wide and curious. "What will we do?" she asked. "Where will we live?" Alex chuckled softly. "I've got a place in mind. A small cabin. You'll have room to move around, but not much else. It's not luxurious, but it's secure. No one will find us there." There was a pause. Then Kaylee spoke again, her voice softer than before. "And you? What will you do? Stay with us?" Alex felt a knot tighten in his chest. He hadn't really thought about what his future held. He had always been a trader, constantly moving from place to place. But this felt different. He looked at Kaylee and Vera, the twins who had already begun to feel like his family, and a sense of warmth spread through him. "I'll stay with you," Alex said without hesitation. "I promised you both that I'd protect you, and I'm not breaking that promise. We'll stick together." Kaylee's ears perked up, and for a moment she actually smiled. A small, cautious smile, but it was a smile all the same. Her glowing fur pulsed gently in the soft light of the cabin. "Thank you, Alex," she whispered. Vera looked at her sister, her face lighting up with a smile of her own. "We're not alone anymore," she said, her voice full of wonder. "No," Alex replied, his voice full of quiet conviction. "You're not alone anymore." As the freighter made its final approach to the planet, Alex felt a strange sense of peace settle over him. He didn't know what the future would hold, but for the first time in a long time, he felt like he was exactly where he needed to be. The planet was small, covered in forests and rolling hills, a quiet, serene world that seemed to promise safety and calm. Alex guided the ship into a valley, setting down on the ground with a soft thud. "We're here," Alex said, turning to the twins with a grin. "Welcome to your new home." Kaylee and Vera stood up, their eyes wide with wonder as they gazed out the window at the peaceful landscape. For the first time in a long while, Alex saw hope flicker in their eyes. Maybe, just maybe, they could finally begin to heal. The soft glow of dawn bathed the small cabin in golden light as Alex stepped outside, taking in the peaceful surroundings. The air smelled fresh, earthy, and alive. For a moment, it almost felt like they had escaped the chaos of the galaxy. The planet, small and tucked away on the outer rim, offered an unexpected kind of serenity. Kaylee and Vera had already ventured outside, their glowing fur shimmering faintly in the early light. They stood at the edge of the clearing, watching the wind rustle the tall grass, a world so different from the one they had known. It was as if they were seeing it for the first time, like children witnessing beauty they had never imagined. "Everything's so quiet," Kaylee said, her voice soft, a bit awed. Vera nodded, her eyes wide as she took in the vast, open sky. "It feels safe," she murmured, as if testing the word on her tongue. "Is this real?" Alex smiled, walking up beside them. "Yeah, it's real. For now, at least." Kaylee turned to him, her eyes meeting his. "And what now? We just live here?" "I think so," Alex replied, gazing out over the horizon. "We'll make a life here, one day at a time. There's no rush. You've both been through enough." The twins looked at each other, a silent conversation passing between them. Kaylee finally spoke, her tone serious. "And what about you? What will you do here?" Alex hesitated for a moment, the question catching him off guard. "I'm here to stay," he said firmly. "I promised to protect you both, and I'm not going anywhere." Kaylee's ears perked up slightly. "But what about your life? Your trade routes? Your people?" "I've been on the move my whole life," Alex said with a shrug. "This," he gestured to the cabin, the planet around them. "This feels right. I'm tired of running, and I'm tired of being alone." Vera tilted her head. "You're not alone now." Alex smiled at her, a sense of warmth spreading through him. "No, I'm not." As the days passed, life on the quiet planet began to settle into a rhythm. Alex worked on small repairs to the cabin, fixing up the place to make it more comfortable. He'd also found a small plot of land nearby where they could grow food. It wasn't much, but it was enough to get started. Meanwhile, Kaylee and Vera explored the surrounding forest, learning about the plants and animals, their empathic abilities helping them sense the natural rhythms of the world around them. It was during one of these outings that Kaylee and Vera came back with something unexpected. As Alex was sitting outside, enjoying the warmth of the sun, the twins approached, their eyes shining with excitement. "We found something," Kaylee said, her voice filled with wonder. She held out a strange, glowing flower. Its petals shimmered with soft colors, unlike anything Alex had ever seen. "It's beautiful," Alex said, taking the flower carefully from her hand. The flower pulsed gently, almost as if it were alive. "What is it?" Vera grinned. "We think it's a special plant. It reacts to feelings. We could feel it change when we were happy. It's like it understands us." Alex stared at the flower, a thought beginning to form in his mind. "You too. You can make this place beautiful. You can connect with this world in ways I never could." Kaylee smiled. "We'll help you. Together." Alex looked at them, feeling something stir deep within him. This wasn't just about keeping them safe anymore. It was about creating something new, a family, a home, a future. And for the first time, he felt truly hopeful. Days passed, and life on the quiet planet began to feel more like home with each new sunrise. Alex spent his time working around the cabin, improving its defenses, and tending to the small garden he had started. Kaylee and Vera, meanwhile, seemed to find a sense of peace in the stillness of their new life. Their empathic abilities allowed them to connect with the land in ways Alex could never fully understand, but he was grateful for their presence. One morning, Alex was out by the garden, digging a small trench for irrigation, when the peaceful rhythm of their life was shattered. A low hum filled the air, a sound that was unmistakable. A ship. Alex froze, looking up at the sky. The sound grew louder, and he could see the shape of the craft emerging from the clouds above the tree line. His heart skipped a beat. It wasn't a routine transport ship or an innocuous freighter. It was something military, sleek and dark, with weapon systems clearly visible along its sides. Alex's first thought was Kaylee and Vera. He couldn't let them be found. Not after everything they had been through. He rushed back to the cabin, his boots crunching against the gravel. Kaylee and Vera were sitting outside, just as they had been earlier, but as soon as they saw Alex's face, their expressions shifted to one of immediate concern. "What's wrong?" Kaylee asked, her glowing fur dimming slightly as she stood up. "We've got company," Alex said urgently. "Military ship. They're coming down." Vera's eyes widened, her ears flattening in fear. "They're here for us." Alex nodded grimly. He had known it was only a matter of time before someone found them. He just hadn't expected it to be this soon. "We need to leave. Now." Kaylee's empathic abilities flared, her fur flashing brighter as she reached out with her senses. Her voice was quiet, but firm. "They're not just here for us. They know you're with us too." Alex's stomach tightened. He had hoped they would be safe here, that their past would stay hidden. But now, it seemed that the galaxy's underworld had caught wind of their location. The hunters, whoever they were, hadn't stopped searching. "We'll be all right," Alex said, though even he wasn't sure if he believed it. "Let's move fast. I've got a hidden escape route. Just stay close." Kaylee and Vera nodded without hesitation. They had learned to trust him, and he could see the determination in their eyes. They weren't scared. Not now, not when they had each other. The bond between the twins had grown so strong over the past weeks that it seemed to glow even brighter in the face of danger. Alex led them to a hidden cave system near the edge of the valley. He'd found it during his first scouting mission on the planet, a place where they could hide for a while if they ever needed to. The three of them moved swiftly, their steps muffled by the thick forest around them. As they reached the cave entrance, Alex glanced back toward the clearing where the ship was now landing. The sound of its engines was deafening, but he didn't stop. The only thing that mattered now was getting the twins to safety. Once inside the cave, Alex took a deep breath and turned to face them. "We're safe here for now," he said, "but we can't stay long." Kaylee looked up at him, her fur glowing faintly in the darkness. We'll figure it out, together. Alex smiled, feeling that familiar sense of purpose settle over him once more. No matter what came next, they were in this together. He wouldn't let them down. The hours passed slowly inside the cave, the only sound being the soft drip of water from the rocky ceiling and the occasional rustle of wind outside. Alex sat by the entrance, keeping watch while Kaylee and Vera huddled together in the dim light. They hadn't spoken much since they had hidden here, each lost in their thoughts, the gravity of their situation weighing on them. Alex's mind raced. The ship that had landed was definitely military, and whoever was on board wasn't here for a peaceful visit. His first instinct was to run, to keep moving. But the twins couldn't keep living like this, always on the run. It wasn't sustainable. He glanced at Kaylee, who was sitting with Vera, her glowing fur now flickering like a candle in the darkness. Her eyes were fixed on something far away, and Alex could feel the weight of her emotions through the air between them. "We can't stay here forever," Alex said softly, breaking the silence. "If they find this cave, they'll force us out." Kaylee looked up at him, her eyes full of understanding. "We know. We've always known." Her voice was steady, but there was a sadness behind it, as if the reality of their situation was something they had lived with for so long that it no longer shocked them. Vera, sitting beside her, whispered, "The hunters won't stop until they find us. Even if we run, they'll track us." Alex sighed and ran a hand through his hair. He couldn't let them live in fear like this. He had promised them safety, a home. He couldn't break that promise. He had to make it right, even if it meant taking a huge risk. "I have a contact," Alex said after a pause, as the idea began to form in his mind. "Someone in the Galactic Council. A high-ranking officer who owes me a favor. I can ask for asylum, real protection, legal protection, for you two." Kaylee tilted her head, considering his words. "The Galactic Council?" she asked, her tone skeptical. "They're not the same as you. They don't care about us." Alex leaned forward, his eyes serious. "They don't care about us, true, but they care about the bigger picture. If I tell them what's really going on, they'll have to listen. They'll have to help." Kaylee seemed to contemplate his offer, and for the first time in a long while, Alex saw a flicker of hope in her eyes. Vera looked at him, her face full of curiosity. "But it could work." "I'm not saying it's a sure thing," Alex said, his voice grim. "But I've seen how the council works. They don't always do the right thing, but they'll listen when they know there's a bigger problem. If we tell them about the hunters, about what they want with you two, they'll take it seriously." Kaylee exchanged a look with Vera, and the two seemed to communicate silently. Finally, Kaylee nodded. "We'll go with you. We'll do whatever it takes to stop them." Alex nodded in return, his heart lifting with their decision. This was a chance, a real chance, to end their nightmare once and for all. He couldn't afford to fail them now. "I'll contact my contact tomorrow," Alex said. "We'll set up a meeting. We'll make sure this is over." The twins stood up, their glowing fur reflecting the faint light of the cave. "Together," Kaylee said quietly, looking at Alex. "We will do it together." Alex smiled, feeling a sense of peace he hadn't known in months. No matter what came next, they were in this together. He would do whatever it took to keep them safe. The next few days were a blur of preparation and uncertainty. Alex made the call to his contact in the Galactic Council, a man named Commander Vash, someone he had once helped out of a tight spot. Alex wasn't sure if Vash would come through, but he had no other option. He couldn't keep running. The twins couldn't live in hiding forever. Vera and Kaylee spent their time in the cave, trying to stay calm while Alex worked. The twins knew what was at stake, and they trusted him, but the fear of being caught never fully left their eyes. Alex could see it in the way they watched every shadow, listened to every distant sound, always alert. It wasn't the peaceful life he had promised them. On the 5th day after they had hidden in the cave, Alex received a message from Commander Vash. The message was brief but clear. Meet me on the surface of Ethera Prime. We'll arrange asylum. Come alone. Alex swallowed hard. This was it. The chance to end this nightmare and give Kaylee and Vera the life they deserved. But he knew the risks. If the wrong people knew about the meeting, it could be the end of everything. He looked at the twins, who were sitting outside the cave, their fur glowing softly in the low light of the evening. He knew they were still scared, still unsure, but there was a quiet determination in their eyes now. They wanted this. They wanted to be free. "I've got a meeting," Alex said, his voice steady despite the knot in his stomach. "Vash is ready to help. He's offering you two asylum." Kelly's ears perked up, and she looked at him with cautious hope. "Will it work?" "It should," Alex replied. "But we can't risk anyone finding out. If this gets out, we'll be on the run again. For good." Vera frowned, her eyes searching Alex's face. "What happens if they don't help us?" Alex hesitated, but only for a moment. He couldn't lie to them. "We make them help us. I won't stop until they do. Not until you two are safe." The twins exchanged a glance, their connection palpable as they silently communicated, and then Kaylee spoke. "We trust you. We're ready." Alex nodded, feeling the weight of their trust settle heavily on his shoulders. He had no idea what would happen next, but one thing was clear. He wasn't going to let them down. Not now, not ever. The journey to Ethera Prime was tense, with Alex keeping the freighter on the lowest setting, avoiding any patrols or signals that might give away their location. The planet itself was a mix of urban sprawl and quiet stretches of wilderness. Vash had promised to meet Alex at an old, abandoned warehouse just outside the city. When Alex landed, he instructed the twins to stay hidden. He wouldn't let them be seen by anyone, not until they had a clear path to safety. He arrived at the warehouse, nervous but determined. As he stepped inside, Commander Vash was waiting. The man was older, with graying hair and sharp eyes, but his smile was genuine. "You're late," Vash said gruffly, but his eyes softened when he saw Alex's serious expression. "Let's make sure your friends get the help they need." Alex didn't waste time. "You know what's at stake. We need protection. Real protection." Vash nodded. "I'll take care of it. We'll get them registered, give them the protection they deserve." As Alex returned to the freighter to bring Kaylee and Vera, he felt a wave of relief wash over him. This was the beginning of something new for them, a future where they didn't have to run. Kaylee and Vera were waiting inside, their eyes watching him closely. As Alex walked in, he smiled at them, trying to hold back the emotion in his voice. "It's done," he said softly. "You're going to be all right." For the first time in a long time, Kelly's eyes shone with something new. Hope. "We're safe?" she asked, her voice full of wonder. Alex nodded. "Yeah, you are." And in that moment, with the weight of the galaxy lifted from their shoulders, Alex knew that no matter what happened next, they had a future, a family, together.